What's up, everybody? Master Reactor here, and today I have a replay. I have won 4 in a row, which is pretty nice. I'm still down about 80 points or so, if not more. But this game that I just played against Edinboss was definitely worth a replay because it was fucking crazy. So let's just see what happened. I throw rock, he throws scissors, so I get the RPS. That is great. Okay, win the RPS. Very nice. I open Torrential, Solemn, Sangin, Knock, Chaos Sork, and Faith. I decide to set Sangin, set Solemn, and set Torrential and pass. He's got Solemn, Night Assailant, Thunder Dragon, Tribe, Jar of Greed, and draws into Duo. He activates the Delinquent Duo, and I decide that I value my hand more than 4,000 life points, so I activate Solemn and just negate his Duo. Then he discards Thunder Dragon and gets 2 more. Okay. Then he sets Night Assailant and sets Solemn Judgment and sets Jar of Greed and passes. I draw into Chaos Sork. So I decide to fire Knock right away, which was definitely a misplay because I should have just swung with Sangin there, but I can't tell that it's Night Assailant. So, spoiler alert, I misplayed like crazy this game 1. Really sucks. This is how you do not want to play. But I used my skills to come back and get the match, because you know it's only W's on this channel. So I flip Sangin, attack him for 1,000, he says okay, and I set Faith and pass. He draws into Regeki Break, he uses Jar of Greed, and draws into Sangin. So he decides to run the Sangin out and crash Sangins. I say okay. And he gets Sinister, and I get Tsukiyomi, which is terrible because now he knows this is a flip effect. So really bad play there as well. I draw into Mirror Force. I say anything, he says okay, fine. I flip Fate, and I get Knockback. Then I decide to run Tsukiyomi out and put the Fate down. He says think. He decides to Solemn Judgment the Tsukiyomi, which I don't understand why he didn't just Regeki Break the face down Fate to get-go, but it is what it is. I set Mirror Force and pass. He end-phase Regeki Breaks and pops my new back row, which is Mirror Force. He draws Upstart for turn. He gets a Sinister back. He uses Upstart and draws into a Deco, which is nice, but then he just sets a Deco knowing that I have Knock, which is crazy to me. But I misplayed so bad this game that this is why he won, which is crazy to me that I even lost. I just needed a Thunder Dragon there and I would have won game 1. Also, I didn't need a misplay like I did a little bit later in this game. So I hit him for 300, puts him down to 2,400, and pass. He draws into Torrential Tribute. He runs out Sinister and crashes. I say okay, that's fine. He sets Torrential and passes. I draw into Jar of Greed. I decide to just banish a Dart, banish a Light, and drop Chaos Sork, and he Torrentials me. I say okay. I set Jar of Greed and pass. He draws into Snatch Steel. He gets a Sinister back, and sets the Sinister and passes. Or sets Sinister and Snatch and passes. I draw into Sinister. So I decide to Jar of Greed, and I draw into Wing Blast. And then I decide to set Wing Blast and pass. He draws into Chaos Sork. I decide to discard or use Wing Blast, discard Sinister, and put the monster back on top. He has the Dark and Light for Chaos Sork now, but just deciding not to go for it. He sets Tribe and passes. I draw into Thunder Dragon. So I get the Sinister back. I summon the Sinister and decide just to Torrential. And it was a Tribe, so that was a good decision. Then I discard Thunder Dragon, and I get 2 Thunder Dragons, and decide to just go for the Chaos Sork. And he says okay, and I put him down to 100. And I just pass. He draws into Sinister Serpent. He decides to Snatch Steal my Chaos Sork, and then banish a Dart, banish a Light, and just hit me for 4,600, putting me down to 400, and him at 100. He sets Sinister and passes. I draw into Upstart, I gain 1,000, putting me at 14, and I get my Sinister back. I decide to Upstart, and then I Upstart again, and draw into Jar of Greed. Then I decide to Snatch Steal, and I banish his, and I decide to tribute the Chaos Sword for Thunder Dragon and run over what I know is Sinister. Then I set Jar of Greed and pass. He draws into Solemn Judgment. He gets the Sinister back. He sets the Sinister, sets the Judgment, and passes. I end phase Jar of Greed. I draw into Heavy. And this is where I misplay right here. I should have never card Deed here. I Heavy Storm. I should have just ran Sinister out. Instead, I decide to card Destruction, trying to high roll BLS or something. But he would have drew Graceful anyway, so maybe it wouldn't have mattered. And I just tack over to Sinister, set MST, set Jar, and pass. He draws into a knock. He gets the Sinister back. Then he fires Graceful and draws into Pot of Greed and Chaos Sword. So yeah, he would have beat me. So if I would have done it that other way, he would have got me. Because he would have just Pot of Greeded, he would have Graceful and then drew Pot, and he would have drew Chaos Sword. So he would have won regardless this game. So now he's got Jar of Greed, Chaos Sword, Solemn, Mirror Force, and Breaker. He runs Breaker out and decides to break the back row. I change Jar of Greed. It's a duo. And then he crashes. And he sets 3 and passes. I end phase MST, which is good because I hit his Mirror Force. I draw Tribe, so this is where I misplay again. I should have definitely just fired this duo right now and just said screw it. Instead, I don't know why I did this. I don't know why I attacked first because it really didn't make a difference. If he had Ring, he would have won. Instead, he just takes the 1600. Then I duo him, and he just judgments me, and he's got the game. If I duo first, he might judgment me, and then I can just summon it, and I just win. So, definitely screwed that game up a whole bunch of times, but it is what it is. So, we're going to game 2. I realize that the player is not that good, and neither am I, but I feel like I'm better. So, just an opinion. I open Card Destruction, Tsukiyomi, Breaker, Mirror Force, Graceful, and Tribe. But I haven't missed playing like crazy today, so I set Mirror Force and pass. He's got double Upstart, Regeki Break, Sinister, Snatch Steal, and Chaos Sword. He fires Upstart and draws one, draws into Spy, fires another Upstart, and draws into Night Assailant. Then he sets Spy and sets Regeki Break and passes. I draw into Wing Blast. I decide to run Breaker out here and break, and he decides to pop my back row here. I say, okay, that's fine. He gets the back row. And then I decide to just Graceful and say, screw it. I draw Serpent, Night Assailant, and Solemn. I discard the Night Assailant, discard the Serpent, getting no value with the Night Assailant, which sucks. I run into his Spy, so I take 400. And then decide to set Solemn and set Wing Blast and pass. He draws into Thunder Dragon. He discards the Thunder Dragon. He forgets his Faith here. He forgets his Sinister, which is nice. But it's not really going to matter. He sets Night Assailant and passes. I draw into a Chaos Sword. I decide to get my Sinister back. I decide to Wing Blast the face down. And then I get my Sinister back. And I use Tribe and I pop his whole board. And decide to hit him for 1600. And I just pass. He draws into Night Assailant. This time he gets his Sinister back. At this point, I think he has it because he has advantage like crazy. But if you think this is bad, just wait till game 3. So he banishes my Tribe right away. And I decide to just Solemn Judgment the Chaos Sword. I just don't want to play. I figure I got plenty of life points. If he has BLS, he just has BLS and he beats me. But if he doesn't, then we got a game. So I pay half at 4,800. And then he decides to set Night Assailant and just pass. I draw into Faith. I get my Serpent back. I decide to go to battle and swing. And it is a Night Assailant. So he targets my Tribe and it dies. I set Faith and pass. He draws into Torrential Tribute. So he doesn't have much. He sets the Sinister, sets the Torrential, and passes. I draw into Ring. I decide to flip my Faith and get Graceful. He thinks about it. He says, okay. And I fire the Graceful into Pot of Greed, Knock, and Wing Blast. I discard the Sinister and discard the Card Destruction. I fire Pot of Greed. And I draw into Faith and Thunder Dragon. I discard the Thunder Dragon and grab 2 more. Then I run out Tsukiyomi, and this is when he torrentials, I think. He decides to torrential. I say, okay, that's fine. I run out Chaos Sword and attack for 2300, getting some damage in. And I set Wing Blast, set Ring, and pass. He draws into a Jar of Greed. He gets his Sinister back. He fires a Snatch Steel, tries to attack, and I use Wing Blast to put my sword back on top, which is nice. I guess Regeki Break would have been better in that situation, but it's fine. He sets a Serpent and sets a Jar of Greed and passes. Standby phase, I get back my Serpent. I decide to just banish a Dark, banish a Light. And I drop the sword. I knock the monster. And I hit him for 2300. He takes it. And then I use Ring and win. So let's go. So on to game 3 now. Game 3 gets really crazy fast. So he gets to go first. He opens Snatch Steel, Pot of Greed, Mirror Force, Dakochi, Solum, and Thunder Dragon. And I've got a pretty dirt hand here. BLS, MST, Serpent, Tsukiyomi, and Knock. He fires Pot of Greed and draws into Night Assailant and Fate. He sets the Deco, sets the Solum, and passes. I draw into Sangan. So I decide to run the Sangan out, and then I knock, and he does not Solum or anything. We banish both our Decos, and I hit him for 1000 and set MST and pass. He draws into Ring of Destruction. So then he sets Fate and passes. I draw into Duo. So again, I should have just Duo first here, but I get punished. So now I run into this because I thought it was Fate, and it was Fate. So he gets his Pot of Greed back, and I was just trying to Duo him and get his Pot of Greed out. But now people are playing Night Assailant, so I'm going to get big punished here. I discard the Ring, and he throws out the Night Assailant, which sucks because then he gets his Faith back. And he draws into Solemn Judgment for turn. He fires Pot of Greed, number 2. And he draws Knock and Spy. And he thinks about it. He decides to set the Fate, and set the Solemn, and set the Mirror Force and pass. I end phase, hit the Solemn with MSD. Then I draw Graceful Charity, which is a nice draw. I fire Graceful Charity. He thinks about it, and he decides to not Solemn Judgment me. So I draw Ring, Kaiku, and Pot of Greed. I discard the Serpent, discard the Tsukiyomi, and play Pot of Greed, sorry. Then he decides to Solemn Judgment Pot of Greed here. So, okay. Now I just run out Kaiku, and I decide to attack the whatchamacallit. I attack the Faith. He goes for another Pot of Greed here. And then I decide to attack with Kaiku, and he says he has Snatch Steel in hand, so he's not going to Mirror Force. He takes the 1800. I banish the Dark and Light. I set the Ring and pass. He draws into Torrential Tribute. He fires Pot of Greed, and I just Ring of Destruction and win the entire match just like that because he did not Mirror Force. That is some crazy shit after having all this advantage on me. Ring of Destruction is just such a busted-ass card. So that is the replay, everybody. Y'all hit the like, hit the sub. Dueling High is back. Doing well. Should be doing a little bit better if I stop misplaying so much.